Wrong button. There you go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Angus Integration Joint Board. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I've agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute your microphones when not speaking, please. And for any members of the public watching, please note that all the public committee papers reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. And before we go into the agenda properly, I would like to advise members that the appendix to item 12, report number IJB 8424, Angus Alcohol and Drugs Partnership Annual Report, has not been issued to members in line with the board's standing orders. So as chair, I would suggest that this report is deferred to February 2025 to allow a full and proper discussion of its contents. I'm aware it has been emailed out to members. We could take it today on the back of a recess, but I would kind of steer you towards the February option. Is everyone in agreement with that? I think it's quite an important report and it would give us a better chance to have a discussion in the round. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, so first of all, apologies. I'll hand over to Liz.
Thank you, Convener. We have apologies from Christopher Schofield and Hayley Mearns.
Thank you very much. And item 2, any declarations of interest or statements of transparency? I'm not seeing any hands up. Okay. So, okay. Just wanted to flag up that due to illness, Jill is online and at home, hopefully staying cosy. So I've got Eunice up here beside me. So get well soon, Jill, and Hayley, who I know is also poorly. Thank you. Okay, so if we move on to item 3, that's our minutes, including the action log and assurance report. So item 3A is the minute for the meetings of August 28th, October 30 and November 7. We can take those one at a time if you prefer, but if everyone's had a chance to read them and they're okay, happy to take that in a group. Okay, no factual errors. Everyone happy to agree those minutes? Thank you very much. And if we move on to item 3B, that's the action log, which is on page 23 of your combined pack. And I'll pass over to Eunice for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. So you'll see in this agenda item that our action log is quite reduced than the ones we used to have, and there's one item outstanding that will come to the IGB in April 2025. And that is a financial report really focusing on prescribing, and there's an explanation provided about what is being done in the interim until the report comes. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, any questions on the action log? Nope, not seeing any hands. Well, we'll look out for that coming through. Thank you, Eunice. And we are now moving on to item 3C, which is the Chair's Assurance report from the Strategic Planning Group, which was Jill's paper. I'm not sure, Eunice, if are you able to respond to that? Okay. Has anyone got any questions on that paper, please? Not seeing any. Oh, Stephen, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And it's probably just a point of clarification for me under section 3, page 25. The strategic financial plan, it says that a development session was agreed for January to March 25, and I just wonder if that had been organised.
Sandy, do you want to? Are you aware of that? Thank you.
Sorry, thanks, Chair and Eunice. We shared a report with the Strategic Planning Group at this meeting on the 27th of November. It had been our plan, and you can see that from the agenda note on the front, on the actual agenda of the IJB, to bring a strategic financial plan update to today's IGB, and that would have set out this intention to have these development sessions. What we're actually going to do, and again, I think it says it in the note on the agenda page, we are hoping to issue a kind of a briefing note to IGB board members before the end of December. And in that, Chair, we will make the reference to those development sessions, but they're not in the diary yet, but we will deal with that as that report comes out. Hopefully that links two things up. I think what's happened is we've done some things before we actually decided not to put the strategic financial planning paper into the IGB reports, because we eventually realised we weren't able to meet that timeline.
I think that particular development session was for the SPG itself rather than the IGB. Yes, that's being referred to.
I think actually, sorry, Chair, I think that will probably be for the wider IGB members. So we'll have to see how we've got with that idea, but that was the plan at the end of November. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, Lewis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wondered if we could have like a brief update with regards to the neurodevelopment disorder part within the report, and just it says that there'll be a kind of test of change over a 2-year period. Just, yeah, what will that be? What will that look like? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. So a paper came to the Strategic Delivery Group asking about recognising there's a demand for this area of business, that the numbers of people that are looking for assessments, that are needing interventions and support are increasing. And this paper was asking for a specific resource around staff to actually deliver clinics and support. We have one neurodevelopmental nurse within the partnership, and she was quite instrumental in trying to look at how we can try and increase the support to this group of people. The proposal would be that supports will be developed over the next two years, and that will reduce demand elsewhere in the system around this service. And then the plan is that it'll be more integrated into this mainstream services at that point, because we will reduce demand elsewhere. Thank you.
And how will that link in terms of perhaps young people going through transition, so who perhaps are not linked in within any kind of services and supports other than perhaps education? How will that kind of test the change link in during transition? Will it? I don't think necessarily.
I don't think necessarily. I think it depends. If people recognise that they would want an assessment, that they've got needs, then there'll be a referral pathway identified, and then matters could be taken forward. I don't think it was particularly designated for young people. There's quite a demand across lots of age ranges. So I think it was a service particularly for people in that category.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alison wants to come in now. Thanks.
So at the moment, we have a very long waiting list in mental health around our neurodevelopmental conditions. This work that's been undertaken with increased staffing will allow us to address the waiting lists, but in particular move to a multidisciplinary team way of working, that recognising people's needs are not always best met by a purely medical model with reliance on being on a waiting list for a diagnosis, then medication. This will be a much more holistic approach that will allow us to identify people's management in the best way for them. When we have addressed the waiting list, that will aid with transitions, because we know at the moment there are people waiting on waiting lists within children and family service that then come to us. We don't want that to happen. So I think once we get our own waiting list sorted, there is a willingness, if we can, to develop services and work across the whole system with our children's health colleagues, and there are discussions within NHS Tayside, quite a lot of development work done around the waiting list within children's service, redesigning very similar to what I've just described, MDT working, ensuring that people's needs are met and not waiting for a doctor first. And there might be things that need a doctor, but how can we work differently around supporting families at a much earlier stage? And that work has taken very much place with education and not needing to come through a medicalised system if it's not appropriate.
Yeah, thank you for those assurances, because I guess what I had in my head was that we know that there are people who are perhaps within children's services waiting for a number of years, still not being seen by the time it comes to the point of transition into adult the adult world, but ultimately adult health and social care. And I guess I was thinking, do they then need to start that whole process again and join the bottom of like the adult list, or are you going to look to try and kind of merge that up together? Yeah.
Yeah, so we are trying to work on that. We need to get that MDT working in place, address our waiting lists, but we do look towards taking people perhaps from the age of 16 if appropriate. And that is very much our ethos around how do we meet the needs, recognising the responsibility to the Health and Social Care Partnership. So there will, by definition there, need to be some working across the system.
Thank you. That's really helpful, Alison. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. And moving on to item 3D, we've got the minutes of the special meeting of the Audit Committee from October 30, and there was an Audit Committee this morning, if my memory serves.
Yeah, but the
Andrew, would
sequence
you...
of events, you wouldn't normally get a chair's update at this meeting. The only reason was because there was a meeting on the 7th of December. Pick up a couple of action items that were deferred from previously. We also got a kind of first view of the Audit Scotland IJB financial performance reports. I believe that's on later in the agenda here. But if there's any detailed questions, I would like to answer them, or maybe or Sandy could answer them.
Nicely deflected there. It's a good move. Thank you. Sandy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I actually think we did draft the Chair's Assurance Report. I don't see one in my papers. No, and I'm not sure. So I've got it in front of me here. So somehow it's not got into the final papers. What I'll do is I'll share that with the board, just for information, to see what we've written down. But I can see it here. I'll just flag up the key things. Andrew's right. We had to have a one-off meeting for dealing with 2 or 3 issues. The ones that he's pointed out from a purely finance perspective, the key one was signing off the final financial accounts. That's clearly set out in the minutes. That was all done relatively smoothly and therefore, from an audit point of view, successfully. And the other thing to note was there's an item 3 on the agenda in the minutes, internal audit follow-up. It's not a big thing. It's been dealt with now, but we did introduce new processes on the back of an internal audit recommendation to deal with all that. So that's all kind of set out in the minute, but just purely for information, I'll send out that draft assurance report just for information after the meeting.
Thanks, Sandy. I must admit, I did think I'd missed something there, but we'll look forward to that. Andrew, thank you very much. Okay, so no questions for the minutes for the Audit Committee there? Okay, so these are noted. Moving on to item 4, and that's the appointment to the Integration Joint Board. And I'm delighted to welcome Councillor Chris Beattie to his first meeting. So it might be nice at the end to have a wee introduction around all the members. So this is for, I guess, it's for recommendation to accept. So we've been through all the council processes. So just like to welcome you on board. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Chair.
And I'd also like to welcome Stephen White to his very first in-person meeting. When I demit office as chair at the end of this month, Steve will be taking over as chair. So it's lovely to have you in the room. And that's great. So moving on now to item 5, which was the Chief Officer update. And you'll have read this, I'm sure. Anyone have any questions? I'm sure Eunice and Sandy will be able to pick up anything on Jill's behalf, unless Jill is feeling able to do. You are. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just happy to bring this on behalf of the Chief Officer today, and it was just to note a couple of things. So we've given you an update today on the staff partnership work that we do within the Health and Social Care Partnership, and an outline of the focus of our staff partnership forums, which meet every 2 months. Barbara Tucker, who's on the call online today, she is joint chair along with myself. And Barbara, I don't know if you want to come in with any further comments around the staff partnership, but from my perspective, it's a vibrant meeting. We have good attendance across from lots of senior managers. We have an agenda that's laid out there, but I'll just give Barbara a chance if she'd want to add anything around the staff partnership before I move on to another couple of highlights. Thank you.
No, I think, that it goes through peaks and troughs like every other staff partnership does, but at the moment it's looking quite healthy.
Thanks, Barbara. Chris has his hand up though. Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Question for Eunice or Jill. The last comment or last paragraph in the update is around the service review. And obviously, as we know, the service review was paused just very recently, as is explained in the report. Though my question, I suppose, is around what are the expectations of the service review was to deliver some cuts to budgets. If this is paused until March at the earliest next year, what's the impact of that going to be on the kind of financial planning process? It may be more a question for Sandy, I appreciate, but just be interested to know what will happen in that regard. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
I think Sandy's going to come in with another couple of things within the paper. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's a good question, and again, when we share a financial planning update, hopefully we'll kind of capture that kind of aspect. In terms of what effect the pausing has, I think it adds an increased element of uncertainty for a bit longer. So that's probably the effect. A pause doesn't mean it's stopped. A pause doesn't mean it won't happen. It doesn't mean we've changed any of the aims or objectives or the intentions of the overall review, which was not just about the financial challenge we faced, but other aspects that we were trying to deal with. They're all still current, but it's been paused. So the longer things that are paused and the further pushed back, it just adds an increased element of uncertainty, and it will be longer before we are clear about things. So that's the main impact. It's if I was looking at it purely from the financial plan perspective, it's another bit of uncertainty. The financial plan has lots of uncertainty in it, and this will just be a bit more. And obviously, in due course, we'd hope to close those uncertainties out. Hope that makes sense.
Okay, Chris? Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, pretty much what I was expecting to.
Right, back to Eunice to let her complete the report. Thanks.
Thank you. So I just wanted to highlight we've been doing a bit of celebrating in the partnership since our last IGB, and that we had an event in November celebrating success, it's called, and that's really a focus around adult support and protection and looking at the work that we do around that important area of work. It says within the report the work that was highlighted and celebrated within that, and good progress is being made, particularly around our AWI work, which was at the last audit we got substantial assurance, so that's really positive. We then also had a week of celebrating events across NHS Tayside. That was the week of the 11th of November, and again there was a lot of input from services across the Health and Social Care Partnership. They are listed there, and we also had 2 posters around our lead partner responsibilities. These were well attended and really good to highlight all the good work that we do. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just before I pop into any questions, there were a couple of things I'd quite like to get an update on under unmet need. What was the timeline for the 10 additional posts? And also, I'm sure members would be quite interested to hear how the ANNET Bank practice is doing now that it's changed hands. Thanks.
So in terms of the 10 additional posts for ERT, that recruitment process is underway. So it's within the system, and I think they'll be advertised in the early new year. And I'll ask my colleague Lisa to answer about ANNET Bank, give a bit more information around that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eunice. Yes, ANNET Bank became ANNET Health on the 2nd of December with the new providers taking over. Early reports, it went actually fairly seamlessly. We were very pleased by the transition. Obviously, it is early days, and we will be monitoring and keeping a careful eye and working closely with the new partners there. But really, it went quite smoothly and as well as could be expected.
Thanks, Lisa. That's great. Any more questions? Lois?
Yep, thank you. It was just with regards to the Carers Act monies. And there's a note there about a follow-up meeting, which is good to see. But I just wondered if we could have clarity with regards to carers' plans and assessments, and are they linked in with self-directed support assessments within Angus? Like, do the two have to go together, or are they separate? Can a carer in their own right apply for that assessment? Across children and...
Your mic's off, please.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, across. Yeah.
Having much luck. Yes, I can confirm that if anybody comes forward and asks for a carer's assessment, then we can do that. Thank you.
Martin, I wasn't sure if your hand is up there or not. I can't see properly. Is it?
It is, Chair. Sorry about that. I was trying to get this iPad. I can't get into raise a hand, so I just have to wave a hand.
Okay, well, it was out of shot, so just bear that in mind for future reference. But yeah, fire away.
Just for clarification, it's on page 33, and it's a barrier to access and ledger facilities. In the last sentence, the information has been shared with relevant IGB members. Is there a difference? Should it not just be with IGB members? Or am I missing something here?
Top of page 32, first paragraph, last sentence. Okay, have you got it?
No, I still don't have it.
All right, okay. Bear with us.
Sorry, apologies.
Yeah.
I've got it now, thank you. So I think this was a question that was asked particularly by IG members, and the people that ask these questions have been given that information. If you would like that information wider circulated, then we're happy to make that arrangement.
Yeah, only, for process, I thought it'd be all IGB members.
Okay, well we can do that.
I think
Thank you.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, just maybe to clarify, it was myself, I think, had been querying, not just within IGB, but across the council and IGB, just some of the, had been raising issues that people were experiencing. And so I know that I received particular information and feedback on that, but yeah, it maybe needs to be shared further.
Okay, that's getting picked up. Okay, thank you. Steve.
Thanks, Chair. It's really following up on your point earlier in terms of the recruitment of the 10 additional ERT staff. Given the overall recruitment difficulties we have, do we get a sense of how successful that's likely to be, or is it kind of a let's advertise and wait and see?
So we know that we have been quite successful around recruitment in general, because we've done a lot of videos and promotion around the work of carers, coming to the Angus Health and Social Care Partnership, coming to our providers. So we have had quite a lot of success recently around recruitment. Like everything else, it's a really challenging landscape. So I couldn't sit here and guarantee that that's going to happen. I think we're feeling optimistic that we will be able to recruit to these posts. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow up?
Yeah, just a final question just around those additional posts. Have they been factored into the financial planning that we've got in front of us today, and or will this be additional burden for future years?
Okay, Sandy.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'm just trying to work out the answer to that. The costs for this year are allowed for indirectly. They're allowed for in one of the paragraphs in the finance report. So we've retained flexibility in our financial projections to deal with any pressures that crop up over this winter, and that's how that would be dealt with. So it's not actually built into the projections yet, but in due course it will be, and we have the flexibility to absorb that. You then go on to ask a question, but what about future years? We are aware that there's a requirement to look at some of our overall capacity in our system. Now, looking at that overall capacity then has to be set alongside the overall financial plan. So these resources, they are one of a number of things that we will consider as we're developing our overall financial plan for the future years. But the immediate resource implication is definitely containable, and the longer term will be probably part of maybe, I'm not saying necessarily a bigger picture, but a picture that we review in a bit more detail to make sure we've got the right components of that ready, and then we will build it into the financial plan then.
Thank you very much. Any more questions around this report, or being asked to note it? So if every...
It was really just to say that appreciated, the different bits of updates that were given within the report. On the, you know, it's always good to recognise good works that's been done. It was really just to say under the kind of successes within adult support and protection. For me, it was just a reminder of the event that we attended last Monday and the candlelight vigil at Arbroath High School. And I guess at this time of year, it just made me think of like how difficult a time of year it can be for lots of vulnerable individuals and groups. And I think it's just important we get the tone right when we're reporting. And yeah, that was all. I just wanted to put that event out there because I think for all it was hard hitting and you know, quite emotive. And it's important we remember those that are struggling at this time of year.
Thanks, Lois. And for those who aren't aware, the vigil was part of their 16 days of action against violence against women. And every year, our Violence Against Women partnership does a huge amount of work to raise awareness of that particular testing issue that challenges all of us. And it's really great to see the partnership working and the support that it receives in terms of tackling such an awful issue that exists throughout our communities, regardless of demographic. So thank you for the reminder. It was a lovely event, very moving, and always happy to support that and raise awareness of gender-based violence. Thank you. Okay, so if we're happy to note that paper and move on to the updated work plan, that'll be Lois. Sorry, that'll be Eunice again.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just really highlighting where we are with our work plan, and you'll see within the report on page 34 there's some changes and updates, and a couple of the things that are being discussed are actually coming today, and then the appendix outlines all that is coming to the IGB over the forthcoming, well, February 2025 is the next one, and then we'll have a new plan thereafter. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It's a constant busy schedule. Any questions around the work plan? We're happy to note that. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And moving on, we have the finance report, and that'll be over to Sandy. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously happy to take any questions and comments on the report, but I'll just highlight a few brief points first, if I may. At the bottom of page 38 in section 4 of the report, we highlight where we are in terms of an updated financial projection for the year end, which is still showing underspend, not dissimilar to what we shared at the last IGB committee meeting, and a bit more detail, although it's listed in section 4 as a summary figure. There's a bit more detail about the factors behind that in section 7 of the report. A large part of the report is section 5, where we discuss individual services. And as I was kind of reviewing this report again just prior to today's meeting, I can see I've used the word continues, and as previously reported, quite a lot as I go through this part of the report. And that is reflective of where we are in the year. A lot of the financial positions that we are reporting on are pretty much embedded now. We've been speaking about them for a few months, been in 2 or 3 reports, and while I'm slightly apologising for using the word repeated, previously said and continues, that is a reflection of where we are. Things are ongoing. We do tend to try to highlight things that are exceptional or have changed, but most of the report is, setting out that things are continuing as they were. It's worth me highlighting, though, within that section 5, there's an area about inpatient mental health services, bottom of page 40 of the PDF version. That does highlight, as we know, that there are overspends in the inpatient mental health service across Tayside. It also highlights that we still have to develop a resolution to how those costs will be managed across the 3 partnerships in Tayside and with NHS Tayside. And I'm just flagging that one up because I feel a proposal is emerging at the moment, and we'll probably come to the IGB relatively imminently about that, setting out some ways forward. But obviously we want to do that as soon as we can, and well before the end of the financial year. The next point I'd like to highlight is in it's right towards the end of section 5 of the report, where we're talking about, section 5 of the report on page 44. I mentioned that there was, as we were writing this paper, a plan to bring a strategic financial plan. I've already said we haven't managed to do that in response to one of the earlier kind of points that was made. We will still issue a briefing note about that. And then underneath that section, just before section 6 on page 44, there's a financial planning update where we're flagging up that some of the allocations that we're receiving from NHS Tayside have had the goalposts a wee bit moved, and basically funding has been reduced. It's not the first time it's ever happened. It has happened in the past. 2 things came in relatively quickly, probably within the space of about 10 days of each other. And when this kind of thing happens, it does move our goalposts around a wee bit. We obviously are aware that there are financial challenges in the Scottish Government Health Department. This is affecting all IGBs across Scotland, and we are endeavouring to do what we can to contain the impact of these things, working either locally in Angus or working across Tayside for some of the funding streams. And I'm hopeful we'll be able to reach solutions that resolve these issues. The next couple of points I'd like to make are with regard to reserves. There is section 7 talks about the financial implications of where we are as an IGB, and the final 3 paragraphs of that section, which are on page 45, talk about the financial position for this financial year. It talks about the pressures that exist in the wider systems that we operate in, which are systems that include NHS Tayside and Angus Council. And it talks about how we may choose to look at those underspends that are occurring this year. By default, those underspends, because they will in all likelihood run through to the end of the year, they would appear in our reserves. And this paragraph, these 3 paragraphs in this paper, set out a proposal to devolve authority to a group of people that's set out in the second paragraph to allow us to look at deploying that funding in this year, particularly with a view to reflecting the whole system pressures that exist across Tayside. And I've tried to cover that in the wording here, but I'm obviously happy to speak about that a wee bit more, and it reflects one of the recommendations on the front of the page, on the front of the report. And Chair, the final point I want to make is of a similar vein. It's in Appendix 2 on page 48, where we are setting out how we deployed some reserves that existed at the end of the last financial year, and we agreed that we would bring an update on that back to the IGB today for information. So I'm happy to take questions on any of that and any comments. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to mention the ongoing issue around national insurance and how that is testing everyone, just to keep it at the top of our agenda, because we don't have a clear picture on it yet, but the potential is significant if we, when the Scottish Government isn't allocated enough money to cover that particular cost. And I know that's testing the NHS in England as well. So any updates you have on that? Thanks.
The simple word is no. I don't have any updates, but you're totally right to flag that up as a risk for us. And I think for us, we have a risks that fall into different categories of relative risk on this. National insurance, employers' national insurance contributions as they affect NHS and Angus Council employed staff, which might be at the more likely end to get funded. Employers' contributions as they may affect the GP contract, and people like Andrew and Alison will be acutely aware of that. That's still uncertain. And then also in terms of this continuum of risk, employers' contributions as they impact on social care providers. And for us, that's things that may be embedded, the costs that are embedded in the National Care Home contract and all the other home care contracts and things like that. So there's varying categories of risk associated with that. And I think some things will be more likely to get solved and some things possibly less, but we're not sure yet.
Yeah, it's coming up in all sorts of fora, and the private and independent sector that we work with. It's an issue, the wider economy, it's an issue, so it's got a lot of potential for risk there. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question on this working committee that's going to look at disbursing our reserves across the whole system. Am I right in assuming that we're the only IGB that has the luxury of being able to do that? And will it have any impact on unmet need, given that the reserves are typically used to cover for overspend, underspend. The reserves are typically used to balance the financial position, at least in the short term. So that is all going to be taken into consideration. There's a number of questions there.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Andrew. So I'll try and, I think there's two kind of main questions that you're commenting on. Are we, let's say, the only IGB in a position to perhaps doing this? I can't comment on IGBs across Scotland, but we are the only IGB that would be looking to do this kind of thing in a position to do this in Tayside at the moment. I think I've probably said in groups such as this before, all IGBs across Scotland are facing financial challenges, and they will all reach a position of financial overspend, not being able to live within their means at some point. And all that's happening is some IGBs are reaching that point sooner than others. And for a variety of reasons, including things set out in this report, we are likely to reach that point less quickly than other IGBs, and therefore we are in that slightly unusual position amongst Tayside IGBs. But I can't really comment on elsewhere in Scotland. You then, Andrew, I think we're asking, would the fact that we might deploy reserves in a certain way impact on unmet need? I don't think it would impact on unmet need. Would it impact on our ability to afford to address unmet need? No, I don't believe that would be the case either. The unmet need is a permanent issue. It's a long-term thing. We have budgets set aside to fund. If the workforce was there, we have the funding set aside to fund the level of unmet need that we have. And partly because we're not managing to attract that workforce at the moment, we then do see underspend. So I don't think it's a factor in that either. I think we're okay on that one. Okay.
And the point that we picked up earlier with Eunice around the 10 posts that are being advertised for will help address that level of unmet needs. Lewis.
Thank you. Just for kind of noting, I think Sandy is aware of kind of my views in terms of the use of reserves and monies going back to NHS and the council, particularly if it isn't clear as to how we can follow that money and see the differences for the people of Angus. Might be a bit easier with the council, or to be able to, I guess, prescribe where that money should be spent. But I guess I respect other people's positions on this. However, I think in future years, I'd much rather see that we were spending our annual monies within Angus and not having to give back. So just for the record, I'd like that to be noted.
And likewise, in the email correspondence, I was anxious that doesn't impact further years' allocations. So Sandy, if you want to come in there.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Lewis. I absolutely do recognise your concerns, and I'm also grateful for you sharing your thoughts as well. And this recommendation here looks to devolve authority to a group of people to kind of come up with a position. Now, we obviously would then share that position at the next IJB. I'm quite happy to, as we do that, say this is what we've perhaps agreed, however we've agreed it, but also to add in other reflections that we may want to put in there, so that when we set that out, we capture the spectrum of views and also comments that support a position that's been taken that we can then follow through and reflect on in the future. So yes, I'm quite happy to do that. Is that okay? Yeah. Can I maybe just make one other comment? Sorry, I'm now piggybacking on the back of that. Sorry, I did, as I was giving my introductory comments, I did want to link back to a comment Steve made earlier on, and maybe it came up about the ERT posts. Yes, so you asked me how they were going to be funded. In these final three paragraphs, the second paragraph, which starts reflecting the immediacy, that paragraph finishes by saying we would retain funds to deal with any additional costs that may be incurred over the remaining of 2024-25 to deal with service pressures, including winter planning. And that's the paragraph that ties in with how we would fund the ERT posts this year. And I just couldn't remember that at the time, but that's how it works. Thank you.
It's good to see Dot's been joined. Right, thanks very much. Any further questions on that? Not seeing any hands on screen either. Okay, if we can go back to page 38, we're being asked to note the projected financial position, devolve authority around developing proposals, and note the update regarding the deployment of reserves as set out in Appendix 2. So if everyone is happy with that, we can then move on. Item 8, and that's around the strategic financial plan, and it's an agenda note that's been deferred to February 2025. So just to give you an update there. Okay, so moving on to the report around integrated children's services and the Angus Promise. And prior to consideration of this report and as part of the introduction, we have an absolutely lovely short video to share with members. And as the video involves a number of young people, I would propose that this be viewed in private to protect their confidentiality. Is everyone happy with that? Thank you very much. We'll allow the live stream to be paused.
Hi, John. Oh, sorry, 2 seconds.
I'm happy to make the verbal introduction and then go private for the video or whatever you prefer, Chair.
All right, okay, if you want to do that as it's still going. Yeah, fine.
Super.
So we're so slick today.
Okay. Colleagues, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to report to you on our work in Angus and present the report on the Angus Promise today. IGB are asked to note the report and consider the opportunities to engage with the Promise work locally as partners to the 3-year plan. The Promise report and plan was agreed by Angus Council in October. We had excellent engagement in the Chamber, and I apologise to members who are hearing this again, but you can view it with a different lens, I think, as an IGB member as opposed to Children's Services member. So, the Promise is a framework of values for all children in Scotland, but it started with and continues to have a sharp focus on those children in care and those leaving care. The children for whom some members here today are corporate parents. Parents for around 256 children you've never met, but you have very specific duties and responsibilities for. There's so much good work that takes place locally. You'll see from the report we're an innovative and imaginative community planning area. Through the Leading the Promise group, partners have been working together on improving how we engage children and young people and how we promote relationships that are important to them. We are making great strides in many areas and receive good feedback locally and nationally. However, there is a significant amount of work to do. And by bringing the report here today as Chair of Leading the Promise group, I hope to extend the work we are doing on the Promise further into adult services to ensure the vulnerability and potential of care experienced adults is recognised and supported. So the ethos behind everything you read about in the Promise report, all of the activity that takes place with our partners, is really about growing an ethos of understanding, acceptance, love and care of care experienced children and young people. Understanding and valuing every child's journey and keeping them in the centre of decisions that we make. And we can only really do that by listening to them. It is a fact that children who are in care and those who leave care meet challenges. And by communicating with young people and engaging with them, they have asked us to let you know as leaders, think about what it means to have a challenge in your life and some of the points that they have fed back to us. So challenge is waking up in a home where you've only just met the people who are looking after you. Challenge is missing your brother and sister and never really being sure why you're not together. So challenge is missing your dog. It's seeing your dad once a week supervised. It's not being able to manage your emotions in school. It's worrying if mum is safe at home. It's worrying if gran can look after you forever, and if not, what then? It's relying on people to deliver the most intimate of care and being vulnerable through your whole life. It's moving into your own flat and feeling alone. It's being grossly overly represented in the prison population and drug death and suicide data because the trauma of your childhood pervades your adult life. And it's having your success measured by achievements in school, achievements in sports, friendships, popularity, employment. These are challenges that meet our care experienced population of young people every day, and these are challenges that many of our young people meet head on and achieve really excellent outcomes. What we want to do today is show you a very short video that Councillor Bell introduced, and it's really showing you the promise in action. So it's showing you some partnership work that we've done in Angus to try and grow that culture of recognising the potential of children who are in our care and who are leaving our care. It's about growing a whole community approach to supporting those young people, and for which you have a very particular role sitting on the Integrated Joint Board. And we ask you to view this not through the lens of children's services, because the promise can traditionally be seen as something that children's services should deliver. But for us, it's about taking the step now about that whole system approach. How do we support families to remain together? How do we support children when they come into the care system? And how can we in Angus be as innovative and forward thinking as we possibly can to support adults and young adults? So if we can stop the live stream, we'll show you a short video at 6 minutes. I'm hoping the tech works.
John, can we stop the live stream, please?
I hope you all got a lot out of that. I love seeing that. It was amazing. Thank you, Kirsty. Are you ready to open it up to questions now, or is there anything else you would like to? Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Yeah, you fire away, Lois. You get in first. Yep.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see this on the agenda at IGB. It is something that I've kind of queried and asked for a few times now. And I think for me it's so important because I think, you know, we have to recognise within the adult world, within adult services, that there are young people that come through who have lived, you know, a really difficult, challenging life due to being either in the care system or having kind of complex needs and health conditions and disability, and require health and social care. And that transition from children to adult services, you know, I think it's been, you know, it's been described often and still is as a cliff edge of, you know, young people facing, you know, a whole new world where they you know, they've already experienced lots of trauma, lots of changes. Relationships are so important, and to lose all that they know and to move into a world where that they don't know is really difficult. And I think, I hope as an IGB we can look to, I guess, you'd really consider what can be done within adult health and social care to support these young people, not just now but in the future. And I still feel a little bit uncomfortable around the promise and the fact it's called that, because in this world where there is so much challenge, financial uncertainty and pressures on the resources, it does worry me, because we know at times that, you know, situations often don't go the way that we would want for young people or young adults, and that can have, you know, devastating impacts. So I think whatever we do, we need to be just mindful of the difficulties that people have already been through when they come through. But I hope that we can really make a commitment to focus our attention and our resource and our time for this agenda.
Thanks, Lois. And Eunice would like to come in now.
Just wanted to say thank you to Kirsty for bringing this report. We are delighted to have this at the IGB today, and just to reassure that we are committed to making sure that young people that are transitioning into adult services, or as an adult find themselves requiring adult health and social care, that we will make sure that they are valued and they're given the priority in line with the promise. We're also committed to whole family support and to making sure that we have that approach as we go forward, and we are looking at our service and how we make sure that we can have families at the centre of what we do as well. And we do a lot of work around transitions. There's still work to be done, but we are very committed to making sure that our transitions are at the heart of people accessing our services. So thank you, Kirsty.
Steve, yeah, can I bring Steve in? Yep.
Yeah, it was more just a comment, Chair. You know, the number of times you sit in front of yourself, sit in a meeting with a report, it's all in black and white, but that video is probably one of the most powerful things I think I've ever seen. So really would like to see more of that, just to bring it absolutely to life. And it's not just words on a page, but that was brilliant. Thank you.
That's exactly the response I was hoping we would get from that. I just think it's so important, which is why we saw the whole thing and not just a segment of it. Lois.
Very quickly, Chair, thank you. And just a follow-up as to what will we do to kind of, like, I guess, monitor and measure to ensure that we are making a difference, and that, you know, from prior, before this was on our agenda, to now, how will that be kind of monitored and measured going forward with?
Kirsty.
Thank you. So just going back to your earlier point, I really appreciate you highlighting that. The promise is promised to be delivered in the next 5 years for Scotland, and the challenges that you see in the report, in the 3-year report, are really taking us in a different direction. We're having to place more and more children away from our local area because of the shortages in care, which means the transition back to Angus is even more complex, and that the networks surrounding children and young people are even kind of more reduced than we would hope to. And those the aspirations of the promise are absolutely right, but it's the workforce and the children and young people who feel it most acutely when we can't deliver that aspiration. So we know what we need to do, we know what we want to do. We want to keep families together and at home, wherever that's safe to do so. When children can't be cared for at home, we want to place them in the local community, and we want them to live with who they consider to be their brothers and sisters, not the biological definition of siblings, but who they consider to be important. But the data in that report talks to our efforts not being successful because of all of the structural kind of limitations that are around us. When the promise talks about scaffolding, that's exactly what it's talking about. So what is the legislation that supports us to keep children together? What is the legislation that enables better transition, so continuing care? But the resources don't always follow. So I think it's really healthy for us not to pitch the promise as something that we're absolutely delivering. And as you made the point earlier, it's a good news story all around. We're doing lots of good work. The experience of children and young people coming through is still not good enough, despite our best efforts, because the systemic issues and challenges are kind of laid out in that report for you. So thank you for that. In terms of measuring impact and what we're going to do, there's a national framework for the promise that is about to be launched, and it has some suggested measures, so there won't be mandatory reporting, but I think that it's incredibly helpful paper for us to have a look at, because it sets out there how you might want to measure impact of the promise of the activities that you're doing around transitions is one of the areas, but under the 5 key bits. So for me, the plan that's there is far too broad and vague. It's saying what it is we're going to do. I would intend that we work as a partnership, and hopefully Health and Social Care will come on board as that, Councillor Speed, but we would use that nationally suggested framework to measure and track progress. Thanks.
Just a very quick bit. It just would be good to kind of have some assurances that this report isn't just coming today and then it disappears, and that we will perhaps have a follow-up and agree perhaps what would be appropriate in terms of a timescale for.
Yes, Eunice, and also recommendation 2 is about the consideration of how we do that. Thanks.
So when I'm listening to your questions, I'm thinking about the work that I lead in the transitions group, and we've done a lot of lunchtime learning sessions across the Health and Social Care Partnership, promoting some of the challenges that young people experience in transitions, and they've been really quite well attended. Yesterday we had an event on highlighting stigma, the culture of kindness, and how we need to approach things going forward. So I'm happy to do a more detailed update in the next Chief Officer report, just to offer some assurance to members that we are really focusing on trying to improve outcomes for young people as part of the promise, but also because it's the right thing to do for the young people of Angus. And I'll ask John to come in as lead social worker if there's anything else he wants to add. Thank you.
Thanks, Eunice. Thanks, Councillor Speed. This is very emotive stuff as well, and I think you highlighted that, the fact that the word promise is emotive. So I think for us it needs to be in hearts and minds as far as the partnership goes. I really welcome the fact that this has come to IJB today as well, and absolutely stand by Kirsty in our commitment from a lead social work point of view to absolutely do what we can to deliver. I think there was a phrase used in the video around, I think, when the young person was speaking about the scaffolding. It was that notion of the system there when it's needed to be there. So that means it's not reactive, it needs to be there. So when the young person needs it, it's already there. It's not reacting to situations. So I think there's learning for us going forward around how to ensure that we have our systems aligned, to make sure that we have all of our staff aware and that their hearts are bought into what the promise is as well, so that we have that overall mutual understanding. It's not just an integrated children's services thing. This is for us. This is for all of us across the board. So I absolutely stand with Kirsty. I think that's a good suggestion, Eunice, as well, and happy to contribute to that going forward and to seek ways and means to ensure that we can provide updates to you. And obviously hearing from yourself about the use of video, there's something about that, isn't there? It's not just providing a report on a bit of paper. It brings it to life when you hear the voices of young people. So I think there's a challenge for us there to think about how we engage with young adults who are care experienced, who are supporting within the partnership, how we can make sure that their voices are heard through this and provide you the assurance that you require as well going forward.
Thank you, John. And I think I've said before that the work that Angus has done on the promise has I found personally really helpful when I'm sitting around the Public Health Scotland table, when we've been developing our own work around that, because the danger is that it becomes very corporate and it becomes very high level, but you really get that heart and soul coming through on that video. And hopefully when Steve takes over as chair, he'll enjoy the discussion that Jill and I have had around putting a story at the start of each of the agendas for the IGB, so that we can really see that come to life. Thank you. Does anyone else? Yes, David.
Just one last comment. As somebody who in my working life spent a lot of time working in childcare, the one thing that I would not have been able to do going back all those years that you've been able to do is show young adults who have got a positive message that they want to keep across about their care experience. And I think that's an indicator of how far the focus of childcare has gone, and focusing on that and then being able to contribute to improving the experience of those who are still within the care system. And that was the bit that I got out of that more than anything else.
Lovely, thanks, David. Okay, so thank you very much. Kirsty, thank you. And if you could pass back our thanks to Elaine and all the teams about the amount of work and passion they put into supporting our young people. I'd be very grateful for that. Thank you very much. And perhaps a topic for a development session next year at some point would be really good. Thank you very much. And we've been asked to note the content of the progress report and consider how the promise can influence and drive the work of the partnerships. I think we've done that, but it's an evolving discussion, I think, and all support to people as they take that forward. Thank you very much. And we are moving on now to item 10, which is the inpatient learning disability transition update, and we have Sandra McLeod online, who's the Deputy Chief Executive of NHS Tayside. Sandra, welcome, and you feel free to fire away in your own time.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for taking this paper. It's presented to you just for noting and to note the continued progress that's been made by the transition group that has taken forward our move to a single site for learning disabilities across Tayside. It also recommends that we can bring a further update to you every quarter as we originally agreed. The paper itself highlights the progress that's been made. In particular, it gives you some of the background, but then does really highlight against all of the recommendations. So it gives quite a detailed update on that report. Gives a highlight about what we're moving towards with the objectives of the Task and Finish group, and really hopefully it's quite self-explanatory, but happy to take any questions for that and to help out with anything that colleagues would like to know.
Thank you very much. I guess from my point of view, I was particularly interested in the number 8 on page 87 around the stakeholder engagement, particularly staff side and families and patients, Sandra. So how are those discussions progressing? Thanks.
Sorry, Chair, my document is item number 8.
Yes, in the table. Yes, thank you.
So we have, as part of the work streams, what we have is 2 groups set up, patients group, and one is a group that is working with patients and families. So both of those, the one with the communications as a broad sector that we've of people who are looking at really how we communicate, when we communicate. We've have things like weekly updates for staff that had Q&As. We have a site that's been set up. We send out regular updates. We send out regular briefings. And with regards to working with patients and families, there's another group that's set up there with advocacy services, third sector, and representations from different group to allow us to keep communicating with people in a way that they feel. But also, I think one of the key things is about understanding there's a difference on the needs of families than there may well be for patients as that's moving forward. So it's trying to capture all that learning and look at how we can work with them as things progress. We're starting to organise events so that we can start, once we get timings, to help people to get down to look at Murray Royal site and all of that. So it appears to be progressing well, but I think with anything, it's all about communication. So really helping that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open it to questions now. I've not seen any hands up, people. Lois.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for the update. This obviously was a huge concern for Angus and the impacts on those Angus patients and families impacted with the move so much further away from home, especially with the Coming Home report and the recommendations within that. I just wondered if we could have an update with regards to the equality impact assessment that was being carried out. I know that there is reference made within the report, but I just wondered where things were at with that and what it was flagging up from an Angus point of view, please.
Thanks, Lois.
Yep, certainly. And I must give my apologies because I had committed to having the Equalities Impact session report back with the first quarter report in. Unfortunately, we've not been able to complete that, but that definitely will be with you for the next quarter. The Equalities Impact assessment is being done collaboratively with all members, so there's 4 separate ones that have to be completed, one for each IGB and one for NHST side, but the work is being done collaboratively through them, and we do have representations of all areas, but we will have the completed Equalities Impact for the next report. Again, I apologise that that's not been prepared for this report.
Okay, thanks very much. And yeah, it's good to have that confirmed. Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions? No. Okay, Sandra, thank you. Appreciate your the update and look forward to seeing that in the next quarterly update. And we were being asked to note, let me scroll back to the start. Yeah, we're being asked to note the progress being made and note that further updates will come on the agreed basis. Everyone happy with that? Thank you very much. And we can move on now to item 11, which is the Tayside Mental Health and Learning Disability Programme update. And John is going to be taking that for us. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the purpose of the report that's before you today is to provide the IGB with an update on the progress that's being made by the Tayside Mental Health and Learning Disability Programme. You'll note within the report a number of key things, and I just want to highlight a couple of them before taking any questions. So it is a whole system change programme that's being taken forward. The ambitions are laid out within the cover paper, which are to provide excellent care and treatment for inpatient care through the redesigned model based on strong evidence of practice. A co-produced model alongside key stakeholders to ensure the model meets the needs of those requiring mental health support in the community. And as already been touched on in terms of coming home ambitions, being achieved through a partnership approach with Commission services so that people with a learning disability receive the support they need in the community, which benefits their own well-being but also can minimise hospital admission. So you'll note that there are initiatives, the project contained within the report, the operational work and the enablers alongside the most recent Mental Health and Learning Disabilities Programme Board decision log, which was on the 13th of November this year, and it does highlight the considerable work going on. So I'm happy to take any comments or questions, however, noting there's no one from mental health or learning disabilities here today, but I'll do my best to answer. If I can't, I'll come back to you.
Thanks. I understand Sandra's happy to take questions on elements of this as well. So just throw it open to everyone. Just Lewis doesn't have a question. Anyone? Okay.
Apologies, everyone. With regards to, again, coming back to what I touched on previously in terms of the neurodevelopment disorders, It states that key elements of care and treatment will be delivered by third sector that are statutory duties, but third sector will be delivering. Could you just maybe explain a little bit on that? And also, again, just following on in terms of the theme around transitions, it says that guidance will be uploaded to appropriate websites and platforms. And I just wondered if you could perhaps explain where that information will be available for those that are not online, because we know that not everybody is able to connect digitally to find that information.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Okay, so in terms of the neuro, the ND, it's easier to say ND, isn't it? I always get my tongue tied. So similar to a number of services within Angus, we do commission a number of services that are some key experts in the field that can provide support in those particular areas, and ND is no different. Going back to the points that were made previously around the funding that's been made available, we will be using the fund really to scope out over the next 2 years to really fully understand what are the needs in Angus around ND. It's still a relatively new area of work for us. I know there's been a lot of discussions involving Alison as well around how we try and best support individuals who have ND needs. So I think over the next 2 years, we'll have a greater understanding of what the needs are going to be and potentially what we will need to commission going forward. Because at the moment, we know that it's a growing body of individuals who require the support. I think it was yourself that highlighted earlier the number of younger people that are caught in that system where they're waiting for an assessment. Often that's not able to be undertaken and they present themselves later on in adult life. So there's trying to get to that point of early intervention and prevention will be a key element of this next 2 years. So the commission services through the third sector will play a key part in that. I'll not mention key providers, but we do have a number of key providers that are involved in our community wellbeing centre that will be coming on board in hopefully May or June this next year. That will, I suspect, provide quite a key link to some of the ND work that's going on and support some of the work that Alison's been involved in through primary care as well. I'm not sure if anyone wants to add to that particular part before going on to the next part of your
Alison
question.
did, but also I'm aware that there's work and consideration around this going on in CAMHS, and the council just approved its digital strategy as well. So there needs to be, I think, some link up around that and engaging with our communities around accessibility, if that could be considered. But Alison would like to come in. Thanks.
Yes, so there's the neurodevelopmental work going on Tayside wide, and there's neurodevelopmental work going on in Angus with the steering group. And peer support has been very much part of the group as key stakeholders, equal partners in care, I would say, and it's them that's highlighting that we need an approach that isn't just about the medical traditional model. So we have got our stakeholders right from the start in how we design services, and there are excellent peer support charities available that we can access in Angus, and it's how do we work with them to design the future, work with the people that we're trying to help and support.
Okay, good. Not seeing any other hand. Oh, Martin, got you now. There you go.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks for the report. It's only for clarification for myself and understanding, because previously we had a mental health recovery financial reserve of nearly £2 million. Is there anywhere within this provision that can link into that reserve?
Sandra, I'm not sure if you're perhaps in a better position to answer that question than I am. If you are, please feel free to jump in.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, actually, Martin. So the 2 million reserves that you're referring to, I'm assuming, is for Angus Health and Social Care Partnerships.
It's for, yeah, Angus Health and Social Care Partnership, but there must be an element that should be available for a linking in. I'm only trying to clarify it in my own head.
Is it for the overall mental health and learning disability change programme, there is an agreement of each of the four, if you like, the 3 health and social care partnerships and NHS Tayside all contribute to the programme support and the work that's around there. So that is all in place, and that's been supported financially by each partner to help make sure that we have the right programme around it. With regards to the funding of each of the individual streams, that comes, if it's community, it'll be through the relevant partnership. If it's inpatients or LD, it's money that's delegated to the health board from the partnerships to deliver services on their behalf. So that's all there. So my understanding would be that Angus's reserves for mental health would be specifically around how they would choose to spend them on their community health and things. But the programme is fundamentally funded in its programme management support. How services are delivered is down to each of the original funding streams. Does that help, Martin?
Yeah, that helps. Thanks.
Good, Joe. Thanks, Martin. I mean, if there's any further clarity required, I'm sure Sandy will be able to have a chat with you offline. Yeah, or come in just now.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Martin. Martin, you've referred to a mental health recovery reserve, which is listed in one of our finance reports today. The things that might link that reserve up and this paper are the financial pressures that are referenced in section 7 of this report, which you might have been referring to. I'm not sure, but if you were referring to that overspend in there, one of the things that we might look to in terms of any contribution to a solution to that, which I was referring to earlier on when I was speaking, we might look to that reserve to help support a solution to that. So if that's the point you were making, yes, we might well be doing that.
Okay, thank you. Big thumbs up from Martin there. Marvellous. Okay, so I think if we go back to the recommendation, it's asking us to note and support the progress being made with this particular programme. Everyone happy with the way things are going there? Super. Thank you very much. And I think if we take the next paper, we'll have a short comfort break after that. Is that okay with everyone? Just to give you a wee heads up. And moving on then to the Clinical Care and Professional Governance Assurance Report. And I think, is that Alison will be taking that? Thank you, Alison.
I won't repeat everything that's in the report. A lot of the 4 main key risks around prescribing workforce, commission service provider failure and unmet need are well-developed risks, and we have extensive suite of actions being taken. We've also got the emerging risk of National Care Service, care home closure, as well as a risk for us, and we have a comprehensive response for these. There is the risk around the female sexual offences examiner, and some good news in terms of we have appointed a full-time forensic medical officer who is female. That helps us considerably, aware that that is not available all the time, and there is further work around how we can support that, but it's important that the board are aware of that. Information around quite a lot of our services there. I'd like to highlight that protection work and the work of protecting people, and that committee now being established, and also the dementia strategy steering group. We have met in Angus, and that was a very fruitful discussion and a lot of work ahead of us, but a comprehensive approach. There's intensive work around our adverse events as always, and I know that there's some overdue adverse events, and now we will be looking to that in the new year. There is work planned around that. Happy to answer any questions.
Alison, thank you. I have a couple, if you don't mind, particularly in terms of care home providers, but the whole system, just picking up that national insurance issue as well, if that's getting picked up in those discussions. And also around the dementia strategy and the involvement of unpaid carers in that discussion. Has that been included at this stage?
So I think that it's John yourself that's got the risk for unmet need in care home closure. You know most about it, and you're also leading our dementia strategy. So yes, we'd be keen to involve carers, but I'm not sure how we've done that, but I'll let John answer if that's okay.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Chair. So, yeah, absolutely in respect of commission service provider failure. I think we've been very upfront and honest within CCPG around this as a specific risk for us. We know that in Angus we have a disproportionate number of smaller care homes. So generally speaking, when we're looking at new developments of care homes across Scotland, they're all over 60 beds. So there's a business model there that would suggest the larger the home, the more financially stable it is. So we do not have larger homes in Angus. So it does create for us a significant risk around that. We have discussed this quite extensively through CCPG, and I do think that our risk levels are appropriate for that. However, we are looking at our market facilitation plan going forward with some exciting ideas into the new year. At the last IGB, we had a paper there around thinking about our commissioning development strategy going forward and how we're going to engage with providers, as well as set expectations from the partnerships end, and that's based on our understanding of need being expressed through public health, through understanding the demographic changes and what the needs are likely to be in the future for service provision within Angus. So we will look to engage a variety of stakeholders next year around some of those issues going forward to make sure that we do have the right resources and the development of the right resources and then the commissioning of the right resources in place. In terms of the second part of your question, was that in relation to engagement with carers, Chair?
Yes, around the dementia strategy.
Thank you. So the dementia strategy, we had our first larger steering group meeting around 4 weeks ago in Whitehills, and what we have set out to do through that initial meeting is look at the key components that the Scottish Government highlighted through their delivery plan for the dementia strategy. A number of those are really quite high level, quite national in essence. So what we're seeking to do is how do we localise that? How do we make this relevant in respect of Angus? So having some work with some good support from Sally Wilson, and Sally, feel free to jump in. But we are taking forward a number of plans over the next year where we'll have a very clear strategy in Angus around dementia, and absolutely engagement with carers through that will be really, really important. It does link, of course, to our carer strategy as well. And we understand that a number of our carers are often caring for someone who may have maybe living with dementia, and ensuring that we have the right supports in place. But Sally, I'm not sure if you'd want to add any more.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, just to say that we've had an initial meeting, as you say, and that was more of an in-house meeting, but most definitely we will be extending that out to other partners, because that's really crucial that we do that. So thank you.
Good. Anyone got anything else on this? So always an incredibly thorough paper that demonstrates okay, Martin, I see you. I see you. Okay. So yes, it's always a big read. Martin.
Yeah, just a thought when you were talking about the level of small care homes. Has there ever been any consideration of these care homes amalgamating and maybe working under a cooperative to deal with costs?
Okay.
Just an idea.
John will come in on that.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Chair. So, as I say, we are looking at the market facilitation plan, and within that will contain some potential ideas going forward. I think it's difficult to comment on amalgamation of homes because most of our homes in Angus are made up of private providers. Some of those are very small providers that maybe operate just 1, 2, 3 homes. There's also others that are national providers as well that provide homes across Scotland. So quite different models, quite different business models existing within our area. So I wouldn't really be able to comment on how providers may choose to work alongside other providers. We do, however, have Scottish Care who are active within Angus and who engage with the independent providers on a regular basis to ensure that their voices are heard, that we're able to hear what their views are, and that we have good lines of communication between ourselves as the commissioners and the providers within Angus.
Okay, thank you very much. And Lois.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just following on in terms of care home and the situation, has there been any consideration given to the wing at Seaton Grove that's not been utilised? Has that featured in any of the discussions of late?
Thanks, Councillor Speed. Yeah, happy to take that. So absolutely. So obviously Seaton Grove does have that wing. That wing's also being planned to be utilised to help support the development within the care home to modernise some of the facilities so that we're able to decant residents within the home rather than having to look externally. So it'll be quite an important factor to keep some free capacity to enable us to do that. But we have spoken around, is that something that we would consider in due course? As I say, touching on the last paper from the previous IGB around our commissioning development plan, we know that we don't often operate at full capacity within Angus, but we also know that we've got certain pockets in certain areas where there is under provision of care homes as well. So how do we try and manage what we know the need to be, what we perceive the need to be further down the road, and make sure that we've got the resources? So for me, having our internal resources with other options for us to be flexible is going to be really important going forward. So Seaton Grove will play a key part in that in the future.
Good news. Thank you very much. Okay. Not seeing any more hands, so let's go to the recommendations on page 104, which we've scrutinised and discussed the content of the report. Is everyone happy with a reasonable level of assurance regarding clinical care and professional governance? I certainly am. And note that further reports will be presented as per the work plan. Everyone happy with that? Thank you very much. And we can take a 10-minute recess now, if that's okay, and see you back here at 22. Thank you.
John, can we stop the live stream, please?
Okay, welcome back everyone. I hope you got a chance to stretch your legs. So we're moving on now to the item number 14, which is the Angus Council Strategic Housing Investment Plan. And I think John's going to take that, yes? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone. So the Council does produce a strategic housing investment plan, and in essence what the document does is sets out the strategic vision aligned to the Angus local housing strategy as well. It sets out the investment priorities for affordable housing in Angus alongside a recognition of what the needs are within Angus across the board. As far as the Council goes, they have submitted this strategic housing investment plan to their committee, which has been approved. I'm also aware that the Angus Council are setting up a housing committee going forward, where a number of outcomes from this or questions from this may be dealt with and funneled through in due course. So I'm happy to take some comments or questions in a little minute, but I think for us, as far as the partnership goes and for IJB, we do play a role within this, and quite a significant role too, because we do host the homelessness services within Angus Health and Social Care Partnership. As most of you will be aware, a number of individuals who find themselves homeless often have other needs alongside their accommodation needs, not always exclusively, but sometimes linked to substance use, sometimes linked to mental health, sometimes linked to trauma, and sometimes linked to being care experienced as well. So there's a plethora of needs that can emerge that we provide support for through our services within the partnership. We do have a role as well alongside the development of the SHIP, and we have had staff oversight through our homeless prevention and solutions team who also support the adaptations required within homes as well. So the partnership does play a role alongside the SHIP. I think the ask really for IJB today is to consider the paper, also to consider the role of the partnership going forward. Certainly we are keen to maintain a seat at the table, so to speak, and to make sure that we are able to speak on behalf, particularly of those involved in our homeless services, and ensure that the development in the future for affordable housing in Angus takes cognizance of the needs and the service users that we are working with. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks, John. And when the Council was discussing the setting up or not of this committee, I was on the Member Officer Working Group, exactly because of our role and housing as a public health issue. So just to join the dots there, and I would imagine that we would get maybe an annual report on the back of that housing committee activity that covers in homelessness as well. So it's really just to start having sight of these papers, I think, so that we're up to speed on what's happening. Does anyone have any questions on the SHIP? Lewis.
Thank you. Yeah, I welcome this report as well because of the, a bit like the promise, the strong overlaps with this committee. I have huge concern and the unmet housing need within Angus. A lot of my caseload does overlap with housing and health and social care as well. And, people that are homeless with a health condition or, a disability, or like you've described, mental health, drug and alcohol, and the impact that not having a proper roof over their head that's a home that they can call their own. People, older people as well, I've noticed more and more coming through that are finding themselves having to, sleep on the sofa of a friend or family, and and that often is for a limited period of time just to get them by. But currently, a lot of the time the offer is bed and breakfast accommodation. So as you can imagine, for anyone whose health is not great, or mobility is not great, or mental health's not great, the thought of having to go to bed and breakfast accommodation, and the cost of that as well. So I have huge concerns. A lot of people with a physical disability or development disorder who are not in suitable housing, and the impact that has. If their home can no longer be adapted, they're often spending long periods of time without access to proper bathing, showering facilities. And I guess I just wondered if there's more that we can do as an IGB, as a partnership to, I guess it's not just an Angus problem, it's a national problem. And my concern is with regards to the SHIP and the development plan is that unless we get, you know, adequate funding that is really going to make a difference, we're going to continue to have people living with, you know, in really quite dire circumstances. Is there anything we can do as an IGB to add more weight in terms of a call to recognise, because Angus has obviously declared a house an emergency. From a health and social care point of view, is there anything that we can do to support that call and add weight to try and influence better funding for Angus?
So the thing that immediately pops to my mind is the health needs assessment, the gap analysis, if you like, around what is being provided currently, what are the needs, and feed that into the SHIP. I'm sure those are discussions that are already ongoing, because our housing officers will be aware of the extent of demand that comes in the door, and it's also linked into council housing rents and the housing revenue account. So just giving John a bit of time to think an answer there. So you fire away.
Thanks, Chair, for the time given there. Absolutely, I don't disagree with anything you've said, Councillor Speed. I think the challenge is for us, I think, to have a local voice and a national voice around this. So each area will be slightly different, but as you say, Angus has declared a housing emergency. We know that we've seen an increased use, as you say, in bed and breakfast use, and that's not what we would want for people. It provides a roof, but it doesn't provide a home. And there's something about having that secure base that's so important for individuals to thrive and to do well. And as you say, it is linked to public health information as well. So I think I would agree, Chair, with your points. We also do have representation on national groups. Our Chief Officers Group, as well as through Social Work Scotland. I can't particularly comment from a national housing point of view, but I could certainly feed back, and we could, around making sure that we have an Angus voice at any local or national housing forums to ensure that we have a clear and consistent voice, because I know from speaking to team members who are supporting individuals that they're finding it really emotional to see individuals ending up in a bed and breakfast when they know that ideally that's not where they should be. It's good that we have that, but it's not good enough. So going forward, we're really clear that we do need to have a partnership voice through this, that we make sure that when the SHIP is being implemented and developed, and obviously the forthcoming Housing Committee, that we have a really clear and consistent voice that is ensuring that service users' voices are heard and the reality on the ground is fed into the local and national perspective. So hopefully that feels supportive. Happy to seek advice further around those national housing groups, but I think through Chief Officer groups, and thinking even Social Work Scotland as well, Kirsty, there's roles there too for us to feed through, but we'll certainly be committed to raising those points.
And I know we've got the COSLA Community Wellbeing Committee has housing under its remit, and they've got a subset housing forum that I know we do have representation on. So Kirsty, did you have a
question? Yeah, thank you. And there is no quick fix to this, and I guess into next year we'll also be looking at the impact of the early release of long-term prisoners as well. That we were assessing the impact of the early release for short-term prisoners this year, which we managed successfully, but I think into next year we'll have a bit of a knock-on effect. Whilst it's not at all a desirable outcome, I did wonder about our capacity in Angus for bed and breakfast accommodation, and whether we think we have enough or it's able to meet need, but in particular around periods where some of our providers may close or may choose to exercise their right to take private bookings over Christmas and New Year, and just wonder if there's any particular needs emerging around that, either for particular periods of time or into next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kirsty. So I'm advised that we do have availability this year. There's 10 current vacancies as far as bed and breakfast goes. From speaking to the service leader responsible for our homelessness service, she's absolutely aware and linking in regularly around the overall capacity, and has also been part of discussions around the early release too. So we are cited in these things, being forewarned is forearmed, and we have had some discussions at those service levels. I think going forward, the challenges are, as you say, we're working with private providers who may decide that they no longer want to do that. And what role do we have in terms of convincing them otherwise? I think at this point we do have vacancies, and we've not reached that point of oversaturation yet, but we'll certainly take cognizance of that and keep an eye on that situation. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Steve next, and then Andrew, are you want to? Okay.
Yeah, I just wondered whether, in terms of the wider prevention intervention for, and I appreciate existing housing stock can be difficult to change it structurally, but for new build, you know, is this the bit area that we should really be trying to focus on in terms of what do we see as a long-term demand that we're likely to face? So do we need, you know, a front door that's just wider to allow disabled access and everything? If we build that into the kind of initial design, then obviously we've got better stock, more adequate stock further down the line, and I think it's maybe that wider kind of area I'd like to see as kind of push in terms of the future.
Yeah, I know that there's certainly discussions within the council around, you know, building properties that are lifelong homes, if you like, that are accessible for changing needs. So that, yeah, I mean, there's huge issues around availability of labour. There's the supply chain issues post-Brexit, obviously, as well. So, you know, there's a whole perfect storm of challenges around housing. But that's one of the reasons that the Housing Committee is being set up, is to look at how we best take that forward. And we all know it's not even just a Scotland-wide issue, it's a UK-wide issue. John, did you want to come in?
I suppose just to add, I think that just adds for me further rationale and reason to ensure that we've got a strong voice within the committee as well. So absolutely highlighting what we know the needs will be. So if it is around adaptions or housings to be built in certain areas, or, you know, certain door widths, all of that needs to be fed in, and we are best placed to do that because we know what the needs are in Angus, and particularly if we commit to coming home and we know that we will see potentially more individuals coming back, we have to ensure that we have the appropriate housing for them to come back to. So I think it just adds further justification to ensure that we have a strong voice around this issue.
Thank you. And the membership of that committee will probably be agreed at the council tomorrow, full council, and I'm hoping to be on it. So, unless I get dinged. Okay. Andrew.
It's a very similar question to Stephen's. Is the problem stock availability, stock quality, voided properties, or the ability of people to pay the rent? Or is it a mixture of all of them, all of the above? Because wherever I look, there's building going on everywhere, but presumably that's not the right kind of stock that they're looking for. So it's very important that we have a voice on that thing so that we can ask those sort of questions. But is it the stock, or is it people's ability to maintain a household and manage their money to pay the rent, basically? Or is that
Thank you, Andrew. I don't know if I'm best placed to answer that, to be honest. I think looking through the SHIP, you can see it's extensive in its reach in terms of how it understands what the needs are likely to be in the future, and it does highlight the diverse nature of housing requirements. I think, not to be sloppy-shouldered, I suspect those are going to be key matters for the Housing Committee to wrestle with going forward, and probably the need to really understand what the issue is, as you say. So, you know, are we seeing certain issues in certain areas? You know, what are the themes emerging from this? So I can't, crystal ball what the committee's likely to do, but I would expect that that's going to be a key component of them as they start up and understand because you can't deal with the issue until you understand what the actual needs are.
There's been a lot of work done to delve into that. I mean, there was obviously the sell-off of social housing from the 80s was a massive impact. But hopefully the Housing Committee will be looking at all tenures, because you know, if people want to buy a house, it's getting harder and harder to get a foot on the ladder. So it's about, you know, affordable housing and the broader provision of the private sector as well. And houses are built to different standards too. So, we've got climate emergency mitigations to take into account as well in terms of energy efficiency and what have you. It's really quite complex. And obviously continuing the work that council officers are doing to support people to maintain a tenancy going forward, because they do a lot to support people to stay in a property if they're having financial difficulties, and eviction is always the last resort. Everyone wants to avoid that. So Martin's had his hand up, he's been waving away. Martin.
No, I was just the observation, and it's great that all that support is there for tenants that have never had homes or to be there. But the observation is we can't make all the justifications and claims and promises we make to people about health and about different factions, but when we're unable, no Angus, across society, unable to give people a basic human right, a house or accommodation. Just an observation.
Absolutely agreed, Martin. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on that paper? Okay, so we're just being asked to note it today and look forward to the evolution of the committee in due course. And we're moving on now to item number 15, which is the Audit Scotland IGB Finance and Performance report. And I think Sandy's going to be taking us through that. Sandy?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This report has actually been out for a long time in the public domain. We've actually shared it with IGB board members many months ago. It probably says in the report. In fact, it does. It says it was shared in July. The Audit Committee has also considered this report in October. And if you have clicked through and looked at the report, you've possibly seen it before. There was a series of recommendations for all IGBs in Scotland. And the reason we partly included it today is because we've now agreed a series of responses to those through the Audit Committee. We've tried to take proportionate responses. We have to bear in mind when we say we'll do X and Y and Z, we've actually got to go and do it. And often we're doing a lot of this already. And that's all set out in Appendix 1 where we said we'd take some additional steps. But the other reason for sharing it is just to remind everybody that it has been issued. It sets out some interesting information. And it's the kind of document that when we're looking at our long-term planning, whether that's financial planning from my perspective or our strategic commissioning development planning, delivery planning, we will lean on documents such as this as we develop those plans. So as we start to come round to our next phase of planning, the kind of information that's set out in this overall plan is the kind of information we'll be reflecting on. But Chair, that really is what we were wanting to do, share it again, let people know where we got to with our specific action plan, and just, I suppose, give it another bit of awareness in terms of everybody being cited on it.
Yeah, thanks very much. Anyone have any questions on that? No, I'm aware it came out when it came out, and then when it came out to the Audit Committee, I asked for it to it again, just so that everyone had that visibility on it. So that's really helpful. I think we'll watch that, obviously, with interest. So we're just being asked to consider and note the report. We've all seen it at least twice, and support the action plan. And yeah, very, very happy and confident that those issues are being picked up locally. Thank you very much. And almost finally, date of the next meeting will be Wednesday, the 26th of February at 2 o'clock. And just before we go, this is my last meeting as chair. It's been an absolute privilege. I've loved it. And I'm really grateful for everyone's engagement in discussions around the table and the support of officers. And I'm looking forward to handing over to Steve, who will be a great replacement. And I'll continue to be the vice chair, which is lovely. And I just want to say how proud I am of all our services, all our staff that work so hard, some of whom I worked with when I worked in the NHS. So as we're all heading towards a different stage of life, just my gratitude for everything you do. Thank you.
So just on that note, Julie, just on behalf of the Angus IGB and Angus Health and Social Care Partnership, we want to thank you for being such a kind and compassionate chair, somebody who's very interested in all the work that is done and discussed through this board, and we really appreciate all your valuable contribution over the last couple of years as chair. We know that you're staying on and you'll still be a member, but we really thank you for what you've brought and your direction, your wise counsel and your advice and your excellent chairing skills. So thank you very much for all that you've done for us, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you. That's kind. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful break. You all deserve it when you get the chance to have one, and bright blessings for the solstice. Take care. Bye.
Can we stop the live stream, please?